Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Preimesberger, editor of eWEEK. Thank you very much for joining us today on this latest segment of eWEEK eSpeaks. It's a series of informal conversations with IT thought leaders from every corner of the business. Our interviewee today is Chris Cummings. Chris is the Vice President of Marketing at FalconStor, a company I go back a long ways with in covering them for storage for eWEEK. Chris, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and we're just like a couple miles away. You're in Palo Alto. I'm in Redwood City, California, and we're not going across the ocean or across the world as I often do in these, but
exactly. Traffic's back, Chris. Here comes the economy again.
Yeah, there you go. So, Chris, give us a little background on yourself, and then maybe just a high level on FalconStor for those of us who are listening along who haven't heard of FalconStor before.
Sure. So thanks again. I'm Chris Cummings, and I've got about now 2 decades in the storage business. And so started off at NetApp and spent a lot of time running our large relationships at NetApp, as well as our outbound efforts and product marketing, product development efforts, acquisitions, and have spent a bunch of time in the software-defined storage space. One was a great outcome, which was CleverSafe and object storage, which is now the IBM cloud offering. And so I ran outbound there. And then one that we really tried, but didn't quite hit the home run this time around, which was Data software-defined scale-out block storage. And so I'm a fan of the value proposition in software-defined. And when FalconStor came calling, I listened.
Yeah, you were with NetApp, one of the real icons in this business, where they started out in the early 90s. It's just what were they called? A cute little server company or something like that. Exactly. And they have grown tremendously over the years. A great deal of respect for Dan Warmenhoven and all the others, and George Kurian, who's there now. I have a lot of respect for him.
Dan and Tom were fabulous leaders. Tom Mendoza on the sales side. Great compliment to Dan on the everything else side. There was nothing that those two couldn't do.
Absolutely. I watched that growth, and my hat's off to companies that can do that. It doesn't happen all the time. So you've learned a lot in your experience. And now at FalconStor is an interesting company. It started back in the 90s also, a little later in the 90s, and has it's kind of been on the periphery, I think, but maybe I'm wrong on this. Tell me a little bit about its place in storage right now.
Yeah, well, and just as you learned about it, that's about the time I was learning about it, because one of my teams managed the relationship at with FalconStor when I was at NetApp. And FalconStor, arose in the 90s and went on a huge run because the need for data protection was growing. And, at that time, you had the EMCs and the NetApps that had their homogeneous offerings and backup for their own systems. But what about backup for open systems and backup for tape to supplement tape? So FalconStor entered that market and really brought a world-class team together. The 47 patents in and around deduplication and compression, which is just astounding. The company's definitely been through its ups and downs, but it's created a software-defined future, about 5 to 10 years ago. And the company is continuing down that path and now has a really good cloud story as well. And so, we've seen 2020 was the year of ransomware and the year of data protection fiasco. So we certainly see that there's an opportunity here for this technology. It's not the front and center technology that we see every day, but when you seek it out, it adds a lot of value.
Absolutely. And, everybody needs a backup target somewhere, whether it's in your system or not in your system. And we just had World Backup Day yesterday, as a matter of fact. And that's to remind us, hey, you got to be aware of this stuff. You can't take it for granted. Your system dies, or a hurricane hits your data center, or something happens and you're in deep doo-doo. So you got to be reminded of that, and we do that every year. Chris, can you define something for me? Storage safe here's a statement from a media advisory you guys just came out with.
Yeah,
StorSafe is the new version of your platform. Is that correct?
that's right.
Yeah, and it's designed with a data-centric approach versus a storage system-centric approach. Can you define those two for me?
Sure. So that that terminology I think is interesting because we're trying to worry less about the hardware, and the product itself is not a purpose-built backup appliance like we've seen, do so well in the industry for so long, but instead is much more focused on the data itself and where it's coming from, and just creating a nice pathway for that data from the primary device to the secondary device, and then ultimately to a tertiary, whether that's another device in another data center, a device in a cloud, or just data being piped out to the cloud. But in order to get the kind of dedupe and compression rates and restore rates that we can get, you got to know what the data is. So that's kind of what we mean by that.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Tell me how it works. Now it's all software. FalconStor for a number of years made an appliance. I know where a couple of different appliances that you could choose from that you would just put in your data center, and that would handle your the distribution of your data and your storage. Now it's all software now. So does this mean it can work with any cloud? Does it mean it can work with any other security system, for example, or reporting system or whatever? Is it one of those pieces that just kind of fits, and then you can make it you can just really make it fit your own system exactly for the use case? Is that how it works?
That's exactly right, Chris. I think, the goal here for us is, you bring your own server. So you choose, you're an enterprise. You've already made a decision. You've got a couple of primary vendors for servers. Those servers are what are operating our software. You bring your own SAN, because the SAN is the first target for the data, and you want that to be fast because you got to get that backup written, and you also want to be able to restore it fast. And then you bring your own cloud. So you can choose, a variety of the public clouds. You can create your own private cloud, or, in some cases, we have managed service providers. They're creating their own cloud and operating this on behalf of those enterprises. So our goal is to be as open as possible. And where that starts is to really fit the mold for these enterprises that have multiple different backup and recovery software products. Veeam, we've seen, has just gone crazy in terms of growth for all the right reasons. But we know NetBackup, Backup Exec, BRMS, Tivoli, Commvault, the list goes on. Our sweet spot is when you're an enterprise that has multiple of those and just needs a shim in this process to give you better value. That's where we come in.
Wow. You just basically use the APIs, just connect them all. I mean, that's it. It's an API world, I think. It's also an application world, but it's both actually.
That becomes true on the reporting side, like as you were saying. Organizations have invested in their global dashboard. They just want to see this as a piece of that global dashboard. So exporting all that data, did you lay down the backups? What kind of dedupe rates were you getting? Where is that data among all these different targets? That's what enterprises want to know. So they have that security when they go home at night, that their data is ready and protected.
For sure. Automation plays a large part in this too, I'm sure, because that's where everything's going right now, right?
Exactly. Automation is the key. When you think about these organizations, they want to retain, depending on their time frame, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days on that, high performance target, because that's their operating, backup set. But we know that no one throws away anything. So use the tools that we have to automate moving that from that first target to the second target and on to retain it. And so you can literally set it and forget it based upon your policies.
Boy, if that set and forget it really worked in everything, it would be such a nice frictionless world, wouldn't it?
It would. I remember when NetApp, we came out with we talked about policy-based management when we brought in BICAST, which is now StorageGrid, the object storage product. And at that point in time, now 12, 13 years ago, policy-based and automation was, no can do. That was just off limits. But I think we've come a long way in that time, that automation is a lot more trusted, but trust but verify, right?
Absolutely. So Chris, we have about a minute and a half to go. What kinds of companies are buying FalconStor, and is there a sweet spot type of vertical that's using the company, or is it all over the board?
It's really, I would say, it is a horizontal offering, so anyone can take advantage of it. But we've tended to see usage in a couple of different verticals. One is we've seen the rise of the managed service provider, as I think I mentioned, and these enterprises are looking at ways to trim what they have to be responsible for in their own IT shops, and backup as a service is something to gravitate into. So MSPs certainly. And then, like I said, it's more of the medium to large enterprises that have lots of different backup software. They've got different divisions, they've got different projects, maybe they're a government contractor. So we see financial services, we see government contracting, and we see healthcare.
Yeah. It pays to be agile. It pays to be able to be Switzerland sometimes. You just kind of fit in, and you're there to be used in any way that's necessary to get the job done. So there's a lot of value in that. So Chris Cummings, Vice President of Marketing at FalconStor Storage Company. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks so much, Chris. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, time always goes fast, doesn't it here? It's pretty interesting. Thanks very much to everybody else for following along today, and have a great rest of your eWEEK. Thanks for joining us on eWEEK eSpeaks. Go to eWEEK.com to hear more conversations with IT thought leaders.